All right, Brandon Carlisle here with Tough Enough Movement. Today I'm here with Jordan Brown as a counselor, as a therapist, and we're just going to kind of walk through his life and what led him into his career and where he's going and everything like that. So let's just get a little backstory of where you were born, raised, kind of thing.
Cool. Cool. I appreciate you having me on. Um, I'm a Valley kid, so born and raised Logan. Um, Never left the Valley. Went to Logan High, went to Mount Logan Middle School, and then uh, kind of later on some things took me places with some different jobs, stuff like that. So traveled around, but then ultimately moved back to the Valley. So born and raised. Never. I mean, I left for bits and pieces at time, but never long enough to stay away for too long.
So. Yeah. It's hard once you get used to the valley kind of here. You're like, I like it there.
Absolutely.
The mountains and everything like that, and it's not too big, but
So. Yeah. And growing up, I was one of those kids that, man, I'm getting out of Utah, right? And then I got out of Utah. I'm like, dude, these places are horrible. They're terrible to live. So 6-7 months later, we're right back here, and we'll be here forever.
Yeah, nice. So going through school, how was? Did you always kind of think you would go this path, or was there other things you had in mind? Did you like school?
Yeah, no, love school. I always loved school. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be a therapist. Originally, I was going to actually go into special education, and so loved working with special needs kids. I was actually 2 years into my program before I made the switch to social work and do the mental health stuff. But the school was great. My mom worked at the high school. My brothers all went there, and so there's kind of that, I don't want to call it a legacy, but like those standards to live up to, right? So it was always very comfortable for me because I saw my older brothers doing their thing, and I just kind of followed what they're. So I never felt like I had to figure things out. It was already figured out for me. And I just went down the same path essentially.
Yeah.
So
then when you you went to USU, you said?
Yeah.
And so you were in the special needs for 2 years, you said?
Mm-hmm.
And
so I was 2 years in that program, and then some things changed. My senior year, and kind of what got me started is I don't know if you knew this, but my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yeah.
So great family life. Never like parents didn't do drugs. They weren't drinking. They didn't get divorced. Right, like your typical LDS Utah family, right? Great upbringing, stuff like that. There was one night my parents called us into the living room and said, "Hey, we got to talk to you guys about something." And so we're like, "Hell yeah! Like we're going on a trip. We're going on vacation. We're doing something cool, right?" And they sit us down, and it's like super weird. Knocker, I'm like, what is going on? They're like, hey, we got some test results. We're waiting to find out, like mom might have cancer. And huge mama's boy. And so I'm like, shit, this sucks. Like this is terrible, right? So kind of don't think about it. Just keep going through sports, athletics, hang out with buddies, stuff like that. And then it was actually my graduation night. And I still this day don't think they meant to do this. So they do graduation, they do like the senior party or whatever they call it, right? And so got enough graduation with my buddies, run home to change, and my mom's on the couch crying. Everybody's in there. I'm like, shit. And so I actually can't even remember if they told me or if I just assumed. But I was like, yeah, like test results came back. She's got cancer, right? And so it was like, from that point, it was your typical. I mean, this is back in 06, 07. And so this is your typical, like, you don't cry about it, you don't think about it, do your thing, right? And so I think I told like two of my closest buddies, and that was it. And then just kept going. So at the time, grew up very LDS. At the time, had my mission call. I was going to go to Australia and just couldn't do it. Like my anxiety was horrible. Just got sick, would lose weight. Like I couldn't do it. So I was like, I'm done, right? So LDS kid, mom's diagnosed with cancer, supposed to go on a mission. I was in MTC for like 2-3 weeks, came home, right? So there's that cliche already on top of it. And the way things change and the way perceived or not, people look at you differently, right? And treat you a little bit differently. I was like, man, like I'm a pretty good kid, like never partied in high school, never drank in high school, never like, I was too scared to do all that stuff. Right. And, after this stuff, I'm like, man, like that's why they don't know me. They don't know my story. And it's too bad they're choosing this. So then I was kind of like, screw it. Like they think I'm a bad kid. Like, let's be a bad kid. Let's see how this works out. Right.
Yeah.
All my other buddies were on missions. So I started partying with the kids that were staying home or LDS, stuff like that for a little bit. And looking back, I didn't understand like how much that kind of shaped where I want to take things in my career and how I want to help people and things like that. And had some really good buddies that really pulled me through. I never went to a therapist, never doing that stuff. Like it was never even talked about. It was just like, don't be a pussy. Like get on with it,
Yeah.
And that's what I did, even though it was like struggling like really bad. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's where I turned. And I think that's where going to the special education program, I was like, dude, I love this. But I was like, this isn't what I want to do long term. And that's what kind of shifted me and jumped in the social work program at that point.
Yeah.
At USU.
Okay.
So
was there, other than, I mean, the things you were saying, was there somebody that kind of led you that way, or was there somebody you influenced too, or was it just kind of like?
No, I mean, I think this sounds bad to say now, but I think one of the things I look to is like, I just need to get a degree, I need to start making some money. What's one of the easier programs to get graduated in, right?
Yeah.
And then so I talked with one of my advisors, and they were super awesome. And they're like, "Hey, have you checked out social work?" I was like, "I don't even know what that means. Like, what is social work?" They walked me through, and they're like, "You can do therapy, you can do all these other things." I was like, "Cool, like that sounds awesome." And it opened a lot of doors. And so it's not one of those degrees that you're stuck in one position. You can do a million different things with this. So I was like, "Hey, that's great. I can figure it out once I get there."
Yeah.
So
then, did you do schooling after you got that social work degree, or was there some way that what led you into going into specifically therapy?
No, so once I graduated, I actually started out with home care and hospice.
Okay.
And one of my professors actually, he challenged me. He's like, "Hey, like try and do something you think you won't like, and just find out." So for my practicum, I worked at Sunshine Terrace and loved it, and then I ended up finding a job with Rocky Mountain Home Care and Hospice, and did that for 4 or 5 years and loved it, loved every bit of it. And same thing, it was obviously a time thing, right? We're working with people that have terminal illnesses that are going to pass away, working with their families, working with the grief and loss and all that stuff that comes along with it. Like this, I love this. I love building these relationships, but then they're done, right?
Yeah.
And then I had the opportunity to work with the Cache County School District doing some mental health for the teenagers, and that's what really opened it up towards I want to start doing the therapy stuff.
Okay. So when you were with social work, you said that you were helping them grieve and everything like that. Was this like you were with the families all the time? Yeah. You were kind of setting up plans and everything like that. And it was just... So
we would meet with our patients and the people that had been diagnosed with whatever terminal illness they had or things like that, and then meet with their families. And so it was cool because you got to hear a lot of awesome life stories, a lot of reminiscing, a lot of regrets, right? A lot of things people wish they could change. And it's interesting this day, never once did you hear, "Man, I wish I would have made more money. Man, I wish I would have bought a nicer house, a nicer car," all these things. I wish I would have fixed that relationship, right? I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. I wish I would have maybe apologized once in a while instead of being a hard ass. And now I don't have anybody by my bedside, right?
Yeah.
And then once the patient passed away, then I would follow up with the families and work with them on that stuff too. So
yeah. So I'm sure, I mean, hearing those life stories, that's awesome and like that. But then the grief's probably a rough part of it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So. And it's interesting that I've never been exposed to that, right? Like I never had any close friends or family members growing up pass away, things like that. And one of the hardest lessons I learned, and I share a story with a lot of my clients, right, is focusing on intent and not people's content. My very first funeral I went to for a patient, super, super nice lady. And she's the one that passed away, and her husband, and just great people. Never like just the kindest people you ever met. And I went to the funeral, and I'm like 20, 21. I'm just a stupid kid, and went up to shake this guy's hand and give my condolences, right? And I said, "How are you?" And to this day, I'll never forget it. He looked me in the face and he said, "How the fuck do you think I am?" I said, "No, what I meant to say is, man, I love you. I care about you. I hope you're doing well. I miss her," whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it came out, "How are you, man?" And to this day, I still look back on it. And if I could change anything, I'd go back and change that moment.
Yeah.
But it's also an awesome lesson learned that a lot of times we do our best, right? And it comes out in the stupidest way. So we try and support our buddies or our family or whatever, and we say the dumbest shit.
Yeah.
It comes from a great place, but we just don't know how to handle it. And that's where I think therapy for me kicks in, where it's like, hey, like, let's get the training, let's get the education, let's figure out how to communicate and work on some of these things that actually help people, instead of just shooting from the hip and hoping that it hits, you know?
Yeah. And I think that because we're all trained to "how are you" is just an initial thing you say, whether you mean it or not. Because sometimes it's like people are asked to say, "How are you?" They just want the generic response of good. Like, how, and nobody's ever honest with it. It's never. And so it's like, you're trained to just have that reaction and say that. And then sometimes in that situation, it's like, that is not what I meant. That's not. And other times you're just kind of like, that was me being lazy.
Yeah.
And not really caring in other ways.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
And then when you go into therapy, when you're doing this stuff at Logan High, like, so what were you doing there? So you go into classes and stuff like that? And
yeah, so I was actually with Cache County School. So I was at Logan High. I was with some of the elementary, middle, and high school students. So we would work with high risk teens, teens with reported suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, kids that just struggle with family life, with friends, with social situations, stuff like that. So a little bit of everything. So we go into classrooms, do presentations. Um, if there were suicides, which have been on the increase lately, we'd go and do kind of crisis management with the students, and meet with a lot of kids and friends and make sure they're doing okay and stuff like that. And then we'd also try and meet with faculty if and when they wanted to,
Yeah.
just to, and I think that's one thing we forget. We put so much emphasis on the kids. We forget these teachers have a super tough job too, right? And we don't really pay attention to them, but it's like they're the ones dealing with this stuff day in and day out. And I can't tell you how many times we get phone calls where it's like, "Hey, fix my kid."
Yeah.
And these teachers are they have to be teachers, they have to be parents, they have to be enforcers, they have to be all these other. They wear a million hats, right? And so a lot of that too is trying to get teachers to come and open up and help them out a little bit too.
Yeah. So obviously there's probably hard parts about working with those kids and everything like that, like hearing some of the stories and everything like that. But on the positive side, like what was it just the helping, or was it getting to know these kids? Like what was the part you loved about doing that?
I think building those relationships, right? And I think a lot of times too, like we don't know what people are going home to. We don't know a lot about their personal lives and things like that. And I think being that one person that someone can confide in, that they can trust, that know they really care and can help them, was, I don't want to say it gives me a purpose or me, but that's what drives me to that, right? And that's what makes me want to do a good job, is because a lot of people don't have that, And we think growing up in Cache Valley, I mean Utah is in general, but Cache Valley specifically, is like that doesn't happen here. Like that's not real, right? We don't live in New York and California and those places, and it's like that. It happens more here than anybody wants to admit or realize. And so that it opened my eyes up to that, because in high school, it was all around me. I never once opened my eyes to it.
Yeah.
I just knew, well, I come from a great family and a great background. So does everybody else. And I'm like, shit, like, wow, these kids were dealing with a lot of, I judge this kid for being an asshole or for being lazy and sleeping in class or having an attitude or whatever. It's like, man, like, I don't know anything about these people.
Yeah.
And so now, like, growing up and going through some of those things, that's what I enjoy about just building those connections, those relationships, and hopefully, if nothing else, being a little bit of a difference maker.
Yeah.
I don't claim to fix everybody or even majority of people, right? But if I can do something to improve their life a little bit, like, that's great.
Yeah. It's like just you help one student or one
Absolutely.
thing. It's like it kind of makes it worth it.
Absolutely.
And I think hearing these kind of stories, okay, so that's kind of one of the things I'm getting with this podcast, is hearing these different things people are going through and struggling. It just gives you a lot more empathy towards people in general. That you're kind of like, and it makes you think back to kind of like you're saying in high school, like, I wonder how much struggles these other kids were having that I didn't recognize, that I didn't see, and everything like that you don't even notice and you don't ask, and you don't think about it and everything like that. And so I think that doing that and hearing that stuff would kind of be like, yeah, there's more bad than you think. The small helps can do things. So
Absolutely.
And so then when you're wrapping up there and you decide, is that where you decided that you're going to do your private therapy and everything like that?
Yeah. So I started with, which is a group practice, and loved it, and just recently made the switch to my own private therapy.
Yeah.
So just a few weeks ago, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, but it's going to be doing the same thing essentially, but just running myself.
Yeah. So when you're doing group, is it with other therapists or with just a bunch of?
Yeah. So there's an owner and then a bunch of therapists within the group practice, things like that.
Okay. So are you doing mostly individual therapy, or are you doing kind of?
Yeah. So I actually do mostly individual, but a little bit of everything. So my youngest client right now is like 6 or 7. My oldest is probably like mid upper 60s, and I do everything in between. And I do a lot of couples counseling, stuff like that as well. So I love working with first responders, veterans. I work with a lot of college age kids, a lot of high school kids, stuff like that's probably the majority of the people I meet with.
Okay.
So,
do you specialize in anything? Like, is there like a certain kind of therapy you like to do? Or
so there's certain trauma therapy. There's a modality called accelerated resolution therapy that I'm trained in that I enjoy doing. And it works for a lot of things, anxiety, depression, but specifically I use it geared towards more PTSD and stuff like that.
Okay.
So
yeah, because I think a lot of people also hear like therapy and they just think there's one kind of therapy.
Absolutely.
Like it's just talk therapy.
Absolutely.
And it's like, what am I getting into? But it's like, I don't think you realize there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. And there's
absolutely. And I think that's what makes a good therapist, right? I think the thing that makes somebody a good therapist is being able to know their limitations. And let's say I'm meeting with you and you come and say, I need help with this. And I say, I'm not good at that. I'm not comfortable with this. Let me get you to somebody else that's a better fit for you or to specialize in this thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think you hear those horror stories. Somebody goes to therapy and like, man, this guy was terrible, or he had no idea what he's talking about, things like that. And so I think it takes a lot for somebody to be able to be like, hey man, like, I don't know what I'm doing with this. Like there's somebody that can better help you,
Yeah.
So
And then I think it's another way to be like, I don't have those tools
absolutely,
right now. Maybe I can branch into it eventually, but
absolutely,
like right now,
yep,
I'm not the right fit. And I think there are therapists out there that don't care. They're like, they want a patient.
for sure.
And it's like, and that's what, when people have bad experiences with therapy, I think they either get into something that's over their head
Hmm.
or something that got into the wrong reasons and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And so I think sometimes that'll give a bad stereotype. They're like,
Hmm.
well, because I mean, I've been to a couple. I mean, I've stuck with one for a while now, but there was one guy that I went to that he just had an arrogance to him, and it was like he wanted to tell you how. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
and when he left, you just felt uncomfortable. And I
Absolutely.
was like, I could see why people are like, I went to therapy once, and I'm like, well, try it again. Like, you got to find the right fit for you
Hmm.
too.
Absolutely. It's just like anything else. And I tell all my clients day one meeting, I'm like, listen, like, if you're not comfortable, if I'm not your guy, like, you won't offend me. I've heard that nothing surprised me more. You can't tell me one thing that would shock me.
Yeah.
So I said, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I promise. Like, you're here. It costs you time. It costs you money. It takes an effort for you to be here. If it's not working, let me know. I'm like, let's do what's best for you. And how can I help you? Whether it's with me or getting you somebody else or whatever you need. Like, and again, I think there's a lot of people that don't do that. And they're like, I can fix this person, right? I hate that. Like, people don't need to be fixed, right?
Yeah.
People are not broken. Everyone's going through shit. But I think a lot of times therapists think like, I can fix this person. Like, I can make them do these things. No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can love them, you can support them, you can give them the tools, but at the end of the day, it's up to them to go and do those things, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we kind of need to understand our place and how we can best support people, but not force them, not make them feel bad for not, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of times I've had clients again that've been to other therapists say, man, like they give me a homework assignment to do, right? And I wouldn't do it because I had life going on or school or whatever, and then they make me feel like shit. And I'm like, that's not the point of therapy.
Yeah.
That's not what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah. You don't want to go to therapy to feel worse.
Exactly, exactly. And I think sometimes that's what happens. So, and I think again, that pushes a lot of people out. You have one bad experience, I'm not going to do it again,
Yeah.
right? And then if they do come back, they're very hesitant to open up and really talk about stuff because they're like, last time it didn't work out, and I don't really trust you yet. So it's very surface level until you can build that relationship with them.
Yeah. And I think also with the therapist too is that you have to feel comfortable with
Mm-hmm.
them. Like, do you have ways of doing that, or is it just being open to them and kind of reacting? Or
Yeah.
like, what's your best way?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is being real. And I have buddies that to this day, they're like, dude, how are you a therapist? Like, do you talk to your clients like you talk to me? I'm like, yeah, because people can read through the bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to sit there in a sweater vest and put on some fake glasses and with my little notebook and drop, like, they're going to know I'm lying. They're going to know I'm full of it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just being real and also being vulnerable with them and being careful with disclosure and stuff like that, right? Like they're not here to listen to my stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I share very little as far as personal life and things like that. Most of my clients know nothing about me. I mean, that's on purpose, right?
Yeah.
But you can still be open and empathetic and let people know you care about them without that other aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so I think it comes down to being genuine, and people can feel it, right?
Yeah.
Words don't mean a whole lot unless they feel and see it from you. And so I think that's where it comes back and can either help you and or hurt you as a therapist.
Yeah.
But,
So what now, like, as you're doing this, kind of, what's your favorite thing about it? Is it just the helping, or is it like what, I don't know if like there's a kind of drive that gets you there?
I think
Same kind of thing, the relationships, or is it?
I think the relationships and it's tough because there's a lot of success stories, right? But on the flip side, there's a lot of the opposite, right? It's like, man, there's no improvement, there's no motivation, there's no follow through. Like, I don't think I'm doing anything for this person, right? And again, whether I know that or not, I always approach my clients and I'll have that discussion with them pretty broadly and just frankly and say, hey, like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Do you really want this? Like, am I doing a good job? Am I giving you what you need? If not, like, let's make a change. Let's switch some things up. It was cool. I got a note from one of my past clients probably 3 weeks ago. Haven't seen this person in a while, and it just said, hey, before I met you, I couldn't see myself a year from today. I thought I was gonna kill myself. And since meeting you, I now have hope. I can see a future. I'm going back to school, like all these cool things, right? And that doesn't happen all the time. And that's not to say that's anything I did, right? Like, that's not a toot my own horn or any of that stuff. But seeing some of that stuff is like what keeps me going. And again, if I see 1,000 people and I can help one of them or make a difference in one person's life, like, to me, that's a victory. Whether or not I hopefully make more than that, right? But if not, at the end of the day, if I can help one person, I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, when I think about like sitting behind a desk all day or like, I don't know, working at Lowe's and loading lumber, stuff like people like that, that's important stuff, right? I couldn't do it. I'd go nuts. And so I like every day's the same, but it's always different shit you hear. And so that's one of the things I love about too is you never know what you're gonna get. There's some awesome days, and then there's days where it's terrible.
Yeah.
You know, and I love that.
Yeah.
So.
And I think also getting that, like that one story or that,
Mm-hmm.
it gives you just a little bit of fulfillment. Kind
Absolutely.
of like, it's like, not that, I'm fine with my job. I've been doing
Mm-hmm.
flooring for 16 years and everything like that, but there's just weeks that I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, I do some cool shit sometimes and
Mm-hmm.
everything like that, but there's just days I'm just like, huh, like what did I do? I mean, sure, I worked a 12-hour day and I did it, but like, what did I do today?
Yep.
And so like branching into doing these podcasts and everything like that, it's weird how it's affected that for me.
Absolutely.
It's gave me this different fulfillment. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can do that with a career,
Mm-hmm.
then I feel like that's a win-win.
Absolutely.
It's like, you're like, if I can make my living and get that fulfillment at the same time and be able to have these relationships, but
yeah, but I think a big thing too is like even in the community, right? Like a lot of people, my neighbors, my friends, people know that I do therapy. I don't necessarily help them, but I'm able to give them resources or access to stuff, or ideas where to find things, and even stuff like that. Like I love doing.
yeah,
And so they're not paying me. They may not be my clients like that, but being able to have that knowledge base and being able to hopefully help somebody in some way, again, is one of the things I really enjoy about it.
yeah.
So.
Do you ever have to fight the urge of like when somebody close to you, you're like, I want to tell you some things to help you out, but at the same time,
every day,
I'm not your therapist. I'm your X and X, but you're just like,
Yep.
Some days I think it would be hard.
Yep.
To like,
you can't therapy your own family, right?
Yeah.
And so, man, my little boy's acting like a little punk today. Like, I'm dad, I'm not a therapist, right?
yeah,
My daughter's acting like a dummy. Like, I'm dad, I'm not a therapist, right?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So it is sometimes hard to like cut that off and switch hats, right? And it sounds stupid. One of the things I do that helps me the most is I have this little duck in my Jeep, right? Those little, I don't know what the Jeep thing is with the ducks, whatever
Yeah.
that comes from, but whatever. So I have one, and when I go to work, it sounds so stupid, but I touch the duck, and like that's my key to turn therapy hat on, right? I'm therapist now.
Yeah.
Not dad, not worried about that stuff. I get home. Right when I leave the office, when I get in my Jeep, I touch the duck. That's dad hat. All the bullshit from therapy stays at therapy. And then I drive home, it's, hey, I'm dad, I'm husband, I'm brother, I'm son, I'm whatever role that is. And I don't talk about work. I don't do my thing. Like, my wife has been awesome. I come home, how's the day been? It was good or it was bad. She knows what both those mean, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
It's not, tell me what your client said, do this or do that. She knows I can't do that anyways.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, like I had a bad day. She's like, cool, go watch the game. Go,
Yeah.
go do something for yourself a little bit, right? And so it's good to have a good support system too that respects where I'm at with that stuff, also understands a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that would be a hard thing to. It's like you can't, but at the same time, it's like you can't carry it with you. It's like because you can't. It's like there's only so much you can do. Like you said, you don't fix them; they fix themselves.
Absolutely.
So it's like when you're not having that effect, I think sometimes it'd be hard to like. I wish I could help you more, but like if somebody doesn't want to fix themselves, they won't.
For sure.
It's like,
and I feel like I'm pretty good at to compartmentalize that stuff. And again, I tell my clients whenever I meet with them, I will do whatever I can for you. I'll give you as much time as I can, but at the end of the day, again, it's on you guys, and I'll support you. I'll give you whatever you need. If you need to come in early or late, like there's times I've done appointments on weekends. I'll come in at 7 a.m. I'll stay 8 o'clock at night. Like, I try and be as available as I can to my clients, but at the same time, it is what it is, and they have to be willing to do some of those things.
Yeah. So. And I think some people think that they're like, I'm going to go to therapy and it's just going to fix these things. It's like, I don't think they realize like, no, there's work to it. Like nothing comes easy. And this is one of those things.
Absolutely. And I think another thing, and one thing I've realized with a lot of clients is you get a lot of people that come in and they'll say, hey, like, I want to change this. I need help with this. I need you to fix me. I need you, whatever. And the most profound question you ask anybody is why?
Yeah.
I need this. Why do you need that? Right? Is that society telling you need that? Is that your friends? Is that your family? Or is that something you really want to change? Right? And I think a lot of times when people look at something, they're like, man, like I don't think it's a problem. I'm being told it's a problem, but why? Right?
Yeah.
And that's where I find a lot of the conflict comes in. That's where I see a lot of like stagnation and not a lot of progress made is when someone is coming to therapy for the wrong reasons. Hey, I'm here because my wife is making me, dude.
Yeah.
Or the judge is making me, or society tells me I need to be here, or it's a cool thing to do right now, or whatever the reason is, right? My friends come to therapy, so I thought I should do it. What do you want help with? Why are you here?
Yeah, if you don't have a reason, like what?
And so it's interesting. A lot of times I'll see that kind of stuff, and that's where we just have one of those blunt conversations, like, hey, like, there's things you can work on, but is that something you really want? Right?
Yeah. So like if not, we're wasting both your time.
Absolutely. We're just sitting here bullshitting. You know?
because I think I also had that bad because obviously my first times with therapists were court ordered, and I was like, I don't fucking want to be here. Like I'm not getting it, and I just listened and everything like that, and they were group things and everything like that, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? And everything like that, and it was until I realized that I needed it and I needed to work on these things and all these things like that, and then that just changed it for me. Where it was like, oh, this is a great tool. And actually, there were some later on that I went to that I was kind of like, they were talking about relationships and the way you do these things like that. And I'm like, this should be taught in high school. Like, I don't use trigonometry every day. I mean, there's times I use geometry, and I'm like, why are we not talking about these relationships? Absolutely. Why are we not? And I guess that would be a question because I've asked that to like Roger and a couple other people. If there was like a course or something that you thought should be taught, either high school, middle school, 100%.
And I think they're trying to implement some things like that right now. Like I know counselors and the therapists in schools, things like that, are trying to implement that a little more. There's no courses, right? Like we go around teach and stuff like that, and we're available. But I would love to see that. What that looks like, how they do, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And it always comes down to money.
Yeah.
Are you willing to put your money into that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's too bad is a lot of it's financially driven for anybody, And so it's absolutely there's value in it. It's just a lot of times we're very reactive instead of proactive. Yeah. And so we're going to wait for shit to hit the fan and then, okay, how do we fix this instead of, hey, before this problem hits, how do we take care of it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think they're getting better because it seems like a lot of schools are being a lot more proactive with that stuff. We're still way behind where we should be.
Yeah. I think it's also hard too because to take with the kids what they learn from it and what they tell their parents, like
for sure
how the parents react to why are you teaching my kids this? It's like, okay, well, your kid might not be dealing with that or might not know this, but like these are things that we feel will help
absolutely
in general, but it's hard to get the parents on the same page of like
absolutely what
and why. They're like, well, why are they not doing their SAT stuff? Why are they not? And it's like, well, we're doing this to try to help them to manage when things get bad and stuff like that.
And I think one of the things and one of the traps we've fallen into, and I think this just comes from generations of doing the same thing, but we don't like to talk about things that are uncomfortable, right? And I've heard specifically from parents, why are you talking to my kid about suicide? I said, because your son's suicidal. No, he's not. Have you ever talked to him about it? No. How the hell would you know then?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to talk to him about it and again, we're reactive, right? Unless there's an attempt made, unless I find a note, unless I find something that's concerning. It's like that's the problem right there, right? And so we don't like to do what's uncomfortable to us. Mental health is uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We got to be vulnerable, and then we have to admit sometimes we make mistakes, right? As parents, as friends, as spouses, as whatever, I have to take some responsibility.
Yeah.
If I don't acknowledge it, I'm the perfect parent. My kid can do no wrong, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy that the stigma that still kind of surrounds it. I made a phone call to a family, and this was a few years ago. It was probably 5 years ago. And I said, hey, we got to talk. Your son just disclosed to me he's suicidal and he has a drug problem. And talking to the dad on the phone, he said, who have you told? That was his first question. I said, no one, I'm talking to you. He said, well, this is confidential. You don't have the right to tell anybody. And it took me so off guard.
Yeah.
Because I was like, man, like I just told you your son's struggling. And your first thought is, man, what are other people going to think? And again, whether that's a religious thing, just because there's that tight community, whether it's just a small valley, whether it's status, and whatever people think, it's just like, man, that's too bad. And that's one of the things that I try and get away from, especially with my own therapy. Is what I always talk to parents about. I say, hey, like, I will always tell you stuff you need to know, but you need to take it serious. I said, I'm not just gonna fill you with fluff, but like, if I tell you something about your son or your daughter or whoever I'm seeing, like, that's a sign. Like, that's something you need to be aware of, right? And it's crazy some of the responses you get from family members or friends or whoever, because they don't want to see it, they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know, that's hard for me to latch onto as a parent, to have that be my first concern is what, and I think that a lot of people are trained that way.
Absolutely.
What are they going to think about me too? That's why some people don't seek help, and some people
for sure
get into these situations where they're using drugs and not telling people because they're like, what are people going to think? And I don't want to know. And I'm just like, if we can get away from that stigmatism, I'm like, for me, it's just hard to think that as a parent, that would be your first thought.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so,
and it's interesting. Like I'll get phone calls or emails from potential clients or clients that say, hey man, can we meet in the morning really early, or can we do this? Because I don't want people to potentially see me coming in out of the office. And I respect that, but at the same time, it's like, what's what's wrong with helping yourself, right?
Yeah.
If you go to the gym, are you worried about what people think? Or you're like, oh man, that guy's physically taking care of himself, right?
Yeah.
But also it's mental health, and it's like, what the hell, that guy's messed up. Like he must be a psycho. Like he needs, wow, something's wrong with that dude.
Yeah.
No, like why does anything have to be wrong? Like he's helping himself. That's it.
That's
right?
it.
And it's that simple, but we can't. For some reason, our brains don't make sense of it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I still don't know where that stigmatism is from that. That
Mhm.
like there's something either seriously wrong with you or you're sick. Like to have to go. It's like no. If you have a cold or like you said, if you're going to the gym, it's like these things. And to it's to better yourself. Like there's a lot of situations that like even before I did therapy and I'm like that, I'm like I wish I would have had the tools I have now.
Absolutely.
Just to help with situations and the way I react. It's like going to therapy has helped with those things in such an incremental way that I'm like, for a lot of people now, I'm like, it's great. Like, Absolutely. Do it, try it. Like, and until you've done something like that, and it's like, I didn't go for a year and a half, and then things came up again, and I'm Absolutely. Like, it's one of those things you don't have to do it forever. You do it till you can
Absolutely
get things on track and learn those tools.
Yep, and that's why I tell all my clients this: therapy should not be lifelong.
Yeah,
if it's lifelong, you have a horrible therapist. It should be as needed, right? Hey, I got a lot of stuff going on. I broke my arm. Okay, go to the doctor, get it fixed.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going through some work stuff. I'm going through relationship stuff. I'm going through some family stuff. Cool. Go get it fixed. Go work on it. Improve it. See you later. You need me in a year, 2 years, 3 years, come back, right? I wish it's funny because we put such an emphasis on like your yearly checkup with the doctor, right? And I wish we'd do that with therapy.
Yeah.
And it's, hey, I know you're doing good. Just go do a check-in. Do a yearly check-in, just make sure, and then cool. See you next year.
Yeah.
If you need me beforehand, awesome,
Yeah.
But again, I think our brains, for whatever reason, we're wired like, it's hit the fan, now I need to go get help. Like, why are we waiting for it to blow up before we try and take care of it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the one thing, too, is that people wait so long until it gets to that darkness. And that it's like, and then it's hard to pull out.
Absolutely.
It's like if you have those items in place before, then like you said, then it's a lot easier to not get that dark.
Absolutely.
And to learn things that trigger you and things that, and everything like that.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Yeah. And so with now you're just doing individual, is there like goals you have for that? Or are you kind of like, for now, I'm good where I'm at? Like, or are you like,
yeah, for now I'm good. We'll see what the future brings. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's some people in the community I've been talking to, and I want to do a lot more community type aspects of stuff. So I still do my own practice, but then just groups, helping out certain populations, stuff like that. I'm really interested in doing, whether that's pro bono or paid or whatever. But some of that stuff's in the works. But that's just going to be kind of on my own time that I'm doing. So as far as the private thing right now, that's kind of what I'm focusing on.
Yeah.
So
we're throughout the process of getting to there. Was there like through school and everything like that and getting in that career, was that a big mistake that you were like a learning mistake that was kind of stuck out that you're like, oh, that really like switched me directions? Or was there something you did that was like, oh?
That's a good question. I'm sure.
Yeah.
There is. There's a lot of instances where I'm like, man, like it's tough to work for certain people, right?
Yeah.
Or for certain companies, organizations, and one of the things I struggle with is when people need certain help, but your hands are tied because of they don't provide malpractice insurance, or they don't provide certain aspects for you to do your job fully, right? And so that led me more into like the group practice and then my private practice, stuff like that, is because I don't like having my hands tied, waiting for people above me to say, yeah, that's okay to do or not, right? Yeah. Treat people like people. How can you best help this person that's ethical, within your bounds, it's legal? Like, what can you do to best help this person? Why the hell do you have to go ask somebody if you can see this person on a Saturday?
Yeah.
They need to be seen. Help that person. And so, hey, can I see this client for free? Like, they don't have any money right now. They're switching jobs. They need to be seen. They're suicidal. No, man, we don't do pro bono here. What the hell? Why?
Yeah.
Like, I'm the one taking the hit. Like, let me help somebody out.
Yeah, right? It's not affecting you in any way.
And so there's certain things where some of that stuff has shaped what I wanted to do. I wouldn't call them necessarily like mistakes or anything like that. I like them more like aha moments where I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work. Like, I need to do something.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're good.
I think that's one of the big things is a lot of corporations think that, right, it's about money. and it's dollar signs. And if we could get away from that, especially with mental health, it's view people as people and what can you do to help those people.
Yeah.
And I think a lot with the stigma and everything else, I think that opens a lot of doors for people.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the areas that we all need to work on, especially like in the therapy community.
Yeah. Are there anybody you look up to now, like that you're kind of like, this person really made me think more about this, or like in your social work?
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely. There's a few people. I mean, my family's always been super supportive, but as far as like actually in my profession, a couple people specifically, I've had a couple really, really good professors that challenge me and kind of ask me that question, right? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why are you here? What do you want to do with it? And Dennis Wildman, he's from the Valley. He's been instrumental in helping me shape kind of my career and where I take stuff. I worked under him at Sunshine Terrace and my practicing for him, things like that. And then he's been awesome, always super supportive and stuff like that. Shannon Brown's the professor up at USU and just awesome dude. And then a lot of my colleagues have been instrumental in, especially starting out, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you go in with, I don't want to say a little bit of arrogance, but like, oh, I've already know this stuff. I've learned it, right? And it's different reading from a book or doing role play, stuff like that, to doing it in real life. Like, holy shit, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like you get that imposter syndrome, like, I should not be here.
Yeah.
Like I am not fit for this stuff. And I had a lot of colleagues help me out a lot when I first started out, where they were awesome. They'd take a bunch of their extra time. We go out to dinner. They would do a bunch of stuff for me. We'd kind of go through cases and stuff like that. They're like, hey, like, have you thought about this or this or this? I'm like, no. I didn't know I could do that. And they're like, what are you talking about, you idiot? Like, yes, you need to do that stuff. So yeah, there's 4 or 5 people that have been awesome and kind of shaping my career and where I've been.
Yeah. And I think that also getting that input from other colleagues and everything like that's instrumental. And then knowing that you don't know everything and having to continue to learn. I think that'd be really big in it. And I think it'd be a hard thing to do, that like, oh, I need to keep tuning my tools to help fix with this.
Absolutely. One of the things I hate but I love about social work is to keep our license maintained, we have to do a certain amount of continuing education credits.
Oh, okay.
And so every year we go to different conferences and stuff like that too. So that's nice because we can pick up, again, resharpen those tools, learn new ones, just put some things in our toolkit that maybe we didn't have before that can help other people out. And then the new therapy office I'm at now, we're all individual therapists, but we do like group meetings, right, where we kind of bounce ideas off each other and stuff like that too. So it's good to have that support. And I think that's instrumental in not only for our clients, but for my sake, right? Like, who do I talk to, right? Like, who do I talk to about some of my clients? Like, absolutely a therapist. But then what if it's that day of, right? What if I can't get into a therapist for a week or whatever it may be? And so it's nice to have those people around you that are like, hey, like, let's chat about this. Let's figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and I think having those relationships would just be key to keeping a successful practice of actually helping people. Not successfully like, I have a ton of clients, but I'm actually able to help or send you. And then it gives you the tool of where to send people.
Absolutely.
You're like, if I have these close relationships with these people, I know people that are better in things. And
and if you ask me right now, hey, I need a therapist for pornography addiction, for eating disorders, for things that I'm not super great at, I can name 34 people right now that I could call and get you in a week or two. You know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty quick transition and get you referred over. And so it's nice to have that. So again, it helps me, but it helps you more because then you're getting what you need out of therapy.
Yeah.
Right? So
are there any things about it that you don't like now? Like with your private practice, I guess it gives you more flexibility, but are there things that you're kind of like, I'm not a huge fan of that? Or like, is it?
Not yet. I mean, I think the biggest thing, and this might be a lot of therapists kind of gripe, is just dealing with insurance companies and stuff like that. Like a lot of people just take private pay, right? I prefer doing insurance companies and working through them just because it's so much cheaper for clients to come in. You know? And so a lot of therapists won't even use insurance anymore just because it's such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the thing that I hate the most about it. It's just, and again, it goes back to that, like, hey, can I please see this person? Well, let me do this, or it's going to cost me. It's like, good God, just like, let me help this person. Like, we'll figure it out, you know? But that's probably the biggest thing that I've hated so far. Everything else is day to day.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think the insurance company thing would be hard to deal with because I feel like they have the same mentality as like parent stuff like that, where like, why are you teaching? They don't need these tools. It's like, they're like, did they have something happen? No. Then why do I want to pay it? And it's like, I don't think you realize kind of like how much this would help just in general, not with them, but the relationships around them.
Absolutely.
And the more you can help one person, it's weird how it has a trickle effect of helping one person can help out so many
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And so,
Yeah. So, and that's one thing. It's just, again, it goes back to the money, right? And there's some insurances that are awesome. Like any insurance companies listening to this, like I love insurance companies, but they're just, sometimes they're a pain in the ass.
yeah.
But,
Yeah. And then I've asked a lot of people this too, but like when I go to like societal needs of like, what are we lacking right now? What do you think would just help us be in a better direction? Is there something missing, or is there something just they changed, or like?
yeah, I think it starts with that stigma, right? Being able to talk about it openly
Yeah.
and honestly without all the shame or the disgust or the disappointment that a lot of times comes along with that. Cache Valley, we're opening up. I don't know if you've heard about the intake center that we're opening up for people that are suicidal or in like housing transition and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
And so that's a really cool resource. We're very limited on resources in Cache Valley.
Yeah.
A lot of times we got to ship people down to Ogden, Salt Lake, just because we don't have anything up here. And it's too bad because we have that mentality like where Cache Valley doesn't happen here,
Yeah.
right? We do a good job with the food pantries and stuff like that for the most part. That stuff could all be a little bit improved. But I think the biggest thing is a focus on men's mental health. And I think that door is slowly opening up a little bit. The fire department here, they have a grant for their firefighters, for their family, stuff like that they can go see a therapist that covers 100% for them.
Oh.
I want to say the police department has something very similar, if not the same thing. But it's cool because one thing that we never ask ourselves is, how do we help the people that help us, right?
Yeah.
So all the first responders like, dude, if I'm getting in a fight, like call the cops. If my house on fire, call the fire department.
Yeah.
Call the ambulance if I break my leg. Who helps those people, right? Like we don't think about it.
Yeah.
And they see the worst of the worst. And so I think there's a stigma about like that still, like there needs to be that toughness in men, right? Which I agree that there needs to be that, but there needs to be an opening where it's like, hey, like you guys need to talk about some stuff.
Yeah.
You can still be a hard ass and still be vulnerable once in a while.
Yeah.
Right. And one of my favorite quotes, and I can't remember who said this, but it's the world needs more good men, not nice guys.
Yeah.
Right? And I think too often it's either you're a nice guy or you're an asshole.
Yeah.
Why can't you be a good man? Like why is there a transition from being either walked all over and taken advantage of, or you're a hard ass dickhead, whatever, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
why are those the two? Why is there nothing in between? And so I think as far as that, like I think the men's mental health is a big thing that we need to work on. And letting men open up and not making them feel ashamed or weak or any of that stuff that comes along with that stuff.
Yeah. And I think that when you have the nice guy and the asshole, it's like sometimes one person could be that same, where
Absolutely.
you're a nice guy or you're an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like, because I've had that where it's like some people are like, Brandon's a super nice guy, and other people are like, Brandon's a real asshole. And I'm like, yeah, no, I could be. And now as I've gotten more understanding in the way, like some people will still see like he looks like an asshole, and then like, but when he talks to me, he's actually a nice guy.
Absolutely.
And like I think that too with the mental health is that we don't talk about it, we let it build up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like you're a super nice guy until all it built up, and then you're like a teapot, and
Absolutely.
it flips, and then it's like then you just rage on
Absolutely.
people. And I think a lot of men struggle with that, especially that like they can go from the nice guy in the world to just 100%. Mm-hmm. There's no middle ground there.
And I think a lot of that comes back to we don't know how to handle any of our emotions, right?
Yeah.
So we put up with shit as long as we can until it hits that breaking point, and then it's too far gone.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of the negative stuff comes in, whether it's domestic violence, it's abuse, it's suicide, it's fathers just taking off, it's pornography use, gambling addiction, drinking, like all those things that play into people's lives that have a negative effect, right? I think it's because we don't know how else to cope with things, and we'll put up with it as long as we can because that's what we're taught. You bury that shit down as far as you can. Eventually, it's going to come up.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's where opening up, like, hey, like you're good to feel that stuff. How do you appropriately manage it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then realizing too that like some of these are secondary emotions. When they say these things, and like what's actually causing the anger, you know, and that people you don't think about it. You're just like, I'm pissed, and you're like, why am I pissed? Or like, I'm feeling this, and it's like, okay, well, dig a little deeper, and when you figure those things out, you're kind of like, you can tune yourself once you figure those things out. But it's like you got to do a little bit of growth to get there.
Yep.
And so. Yep. But it's always just funny when I think about that. When I have conversations now, there's been people that open up to me about that have like that. They're just like, dude, I don't even tell my wife this. Like,
Uh-huh.
and they're like, when I saw you come out and say this, they're like, I saw you, and I'm like, that guy doesn't have any problems. And then they're
Uh-huh.
like, that guy doesn't struggle. And then they're like, when you opened up and said these things, they were like, shit, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you can. There's a lot of things you can do.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely. And that's a few things that I'm kind of in the works on right now is getting a men's support group going, um, and mainly a safe place for guys to talk and be open about stuff, and then walking away. But also, so they're not feeling like they're on an island. Like, dude, why am I the only one dealing with this? All the other guys at the gym are fine. We don't know what they're going through, right? And then another big thing that's really big in the Valley right now is a faith transition group with people dealing with either leaving the church or joining the church, things like that. And how do they manage that with their families or their friends or their spouses, or whatever like that? Like, that's a really big need.
yeah,
Going on in the Valley right now too.
I think it's especially here. It's really hard because especially if you've grown up in it, and like, because the LDS religion is very family based, and it has great values and everything like that. Absolutely. But then when you're completely tied into that, it's like, who am I without it?
Absolutely. And when people make that decision, hey, like, I don't want to be part of this anymore, or they take a step back or whatever it may be. I mean, they lose a lot, right? Like, they lose a community, they lose that support group, they lose friends, they lose neighbors. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen, unfortunately, with that. And it's like, damn, like, what did I just do?
Yeah.
You know, and it plays a negative effect on a lot of people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think it's hard to, like, finding that. It's kind of awesome. You have to search of who you are.
Absolutely.
To find yourself outside of it, because they've just been so based in things like that. And it happens with a lot of it, but I'm just like, when somebody leaves and everything like that or goes, I'm like, it's a hard transition that I don't think people think about.
Absolutely.
Like, that's got to be hard for you, and like, to be able to do that. And so,
absolutely,
I didn't realize we had that. That's really cool.
That's a big thing right now. And I think one of the things that plays in that is we have this view of you're this or you're that, right? There's no in between.
Yeah.
So it's either you're this or you are drinking, doing drugs, smoking, and it's a weird thing how we jump from this to that. But it's like, no, like, you can still live all these morals and values and have your, you know what I mean, and do this thing. And I think people really struggle, especially, I mean, I've had clients that are 45 years old, 50 years old, taking a step back. They're like, dude, I've been in this for 50 years. What do I do now?
Yeah.
Right. And again, I don't think it's a good or a bad thing. It is what it is. And how do we best help people navigate that situation? Because it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm not saying like leave or to go stay
sure.
like that. It's like, but if you decide to change your mind or you're doing
absolutely,
you need something to kind of help you get through that. And
yep. And hopefully that's what we're going to try and build, is hopefully that community where people, and not saying you have to be a member or not a member or anything like that, but it's just a place where people can come and openly discuss things and talk. And we don't have that, like, we got to be careful what we say and how we say it because we want to offend you. It's like, no, like, let's have an open, honest discussion and work through this, you know?
And I think people can struggle with it with a lot of things, like, especially not just leaving a religion or anything like that or work, but like sometimes when you leave a friend group or like when you realize you're going down a bad path, which I obviously know and I've done, but like trying to step away from those people and like everything like that, all of a sudden same kind of feeling. You're like, oh, who am I? This is what I used to do, and this is who I used to do it with. What do I do now? And everything like that. And I think finding yourself and the things that help you.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of one of the other things that I'm telling people is like, whether it's therapy or you got to find the things that help you deal with things, cope with things, or just get a hold of everything going on and analyze yourself.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, maybe therapy's not. And like I said, first try it and maybe try a couple therapists, but if that's not it, you know, meditation, yoga, whatever it takes.
Absolutely. And I think one thing we discount and we don't talk about is it's just, how do you live a healthy lifestyle?
Yeah.
Get outside, get good sleep, get some sun, get some water. And this is one thing that stuck with me. I was in my undergrad class, and one of my professors said, treat yourself like a houseplant. Sunlight, food, water, done. That's it. That's all you need, right? And it's like, it's that simple. A lot of times it really is like, I'm downstairs, I'm in my basement that's pitch black, I'm laying on the couch all day long and I feel sad, but I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Well, how about we change that? Like, what if we just go for a walk for a second? What if we just try and hydrate ourselves? What if we try and give ourselves some good food? What if we do some of these little simple things that are not, these are not aha answers. Like, people know how to do this, right? It's just following through. It's being consistent. It's doing the unremarkable things remarkably consistent, right? And that leads to those big changes. And so it's doing these small little things, these stupid mundane things that no one cares about every single day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The guy I talked to you yesterday, we talked about this because I've had some people talk about how they hate motivation because motivation, it's like, and we talked about, he's like, I like discipline because motivation, you might get a workout in from it, but it's not going to keep you in the long run. And so when you're all these small little things like getting water, and it's like if you just put those in every day, or these other things, and figure out the things that work for you, and if you just do those little things 5 minutes a day and everything like that, the difference is going to make. And that's not going to come from motivation.
Yep.
You know, you read a quote and you're like, oh, and then you make your New Year's resolution and you do something good for 3 weeks.
Yep.
It's like it's a long stretch. You know, you got to keep with it.
Yep.
And so,
and controversial take. I don't believe in motivation.
No.
I don't think it's a thing.
Yeah.
I could lay on your couch all day long and hope motivation finds me and kicks me in the ass. It's not going to, right? It's that snowball effect. I have to initiate something. And again, whether that's just getting a good night's sleep and waking up saying like, well, I'm ready to take on the day, right? Or whatever that may be. But motivation doesn't just find us.
Yeah.
We have to initiate something to get that going. And that's up to us to build that momentum and keep it going. And so again, I agree with that 100%, where you give me somebody that's motivated or somebody that's disciplined, I take the person that's disciplined 1,000 times over the person that has motivation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And people have that there to get all their posts and everything like that. Like, that's great, but like, I think
and I'm not saying motivation's a bad thing.
No, and I'm not going to dog on it either. Like sometimes it will lead into those disciplines.
Absolutely.
But it's like you said, it's kind of a fickle thing that's just
absolutely.
And you're not always going to be able to find it on those days that are dark, and motivation's not going to get you out. Yep. It's not going to get you out of that funk.
Absolutely.
And then eating all those things is kind of where it needs to go.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing I was going to say was like how you're saying you're getting more resources here. Is that's kind of where I'm wanting to go with this, is to be able to show people resources. Absolutely. And where they could go. And so like as I go through these things, as I get people be like, okay, here's a resource, here's something. Absolutely. And so we'll just have you say where you're at and everything like that, and like where they can find you. Cool. Now. So
if you jump on psychologytoday.com, it's my favorite resource, but you type in your address or Logan, Utah or whatever, and it pulls up every single therapist in the valley.
Okay.
And then it gives you a little like synopsis of what they do, what they specialize in, the population they work with, stuff like that. So you can type in my name, you can type in Logan, Utah, pulls up everybody. You can search through the 8 or 9 pages of therapists, right?
Yeah.
And see kind of who would be a best fit for you. The other resource I think doesn't get talked about enough. We talk about a lot in the schools, but is Safe UT. Have you heard about that?
No, I read about it.
So it's an app that you can download. It's a free app, but you can text and talk on it. So if you're struggling, if you're having suicidal thoughts, things like that, it runs through the University of Utah, and then they can get appropriate help or resources to you wherever you're at in the whole state.
Okay.
And so that's one of my favorite things I get all my clients do. It's been awesome, and they do a very, very good job with that.
Yeah.
So as far as local resources, there's not a lot, right? So you talk to the therapist. It depends on what the issues are too, but there's a few websites that you can Google just about Cache Valley mental health resources or food pantry, stuff like that pulls up a few things.
Yeah.
But it's tough in the valley right now.
Yeah. So your practice, you said, so you're in Hyde Park now?
So I'm in Hyde Park, yeah. So 338 West, 300 North. I believe it's Autumn Care, assisted living or whatever it is.
Okay.
There's an office building that kind of shares a parking lot right there. And so it's Hyde Park Therapy Associates. Okay. I think they have like 12 or 13 kind of individual therapists, but we all kind of share an office space, things like that. Yeah. So
do you have a Instagram or Facebook or anything like that? Or are you going to be working on those?
Yeah. So that stuff's all coming up. That's my wife's job, not mine. I don't do any of that social media stuff. So I'm terrible at it. But yeah, I have a Facebook that's just Jordan Brown Counseling.
Okay.
And then the Instagram is coming up whenever I get to it.
Okay.
So it's been a quick transition. The last few weeks it's been a minute setting everything up. But.
Yeah. So the process of getting everything like that, I'm like, oh, this is exhausting.
I'm sure
doing
it's
all the social media.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So, and I mean, it was great to hear these things because, like, I mean, last time I knew you, we were in high school. You were Cam's little brother and everything like that.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. I was like, maybe that's why he went into therapy. Have to put up with Cam. I love Cam. He can just be an asshole sometimes. So was I. And that's why we got along so well. But he was one of my great friends, and I'm just like, I'm gonna have to throw out some shit because I throw shit at my brothers and everything like that. And Cam's one of my brothers. So.
See, and this is how it was. It was always, if it was, are you Josh's little brother? Is a good thing.
Yeah.
Are you Cam's little brother? That's a bad thing. Are you Cheryl's son? I'm good.
Yeah.
Right. So depending on how people ask the question, I already know. I was like, oh, damn it, Cam.
Yeah.
Or hey, thanks, Mom. How it worked out.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what I always felt bad for my little brother Chase because I was like, because Tristan, my older brother, he's just your poster child. Uh-huh. Like he was the nicest kid, sweet, and everything like that, great student, and all this stuff. And then here I come, and so then they're like, Carla, are you Tristan? And then it's like, both, and they're like, "Oh, what am I getting into? What am I going to deal with
Yep.
today?"
Yep.
I was like, "That must have been a hassle."
Absolutely.
But
Well, my brothers are great, by the way. My
yeah,
family's fantastic. But
yeah. So I mean, on that, if people could take one thing away from this episode today, like, what do you think the best thing that?
I think the biggest thing is if you're struggling, reach out for help. I don't care who it's to. I don't care if it's a therapist. I don't care if it's a friend. I don't care if it's a family member. I don't care if it's your neighbor next door. Reach out for help. I think too many people struggle in silence, right?
Yeah.
And it's because we're scared and we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't know how people are going to take it. And I always tell my clients, if you reverse the roles, if you had a buddy that came and talked to you and said, "I'm struggling," what would you do? Would you make fun of them? Weak ass?
Yeah.
No, you'd help them, right?
Yeah.
But I think, well, if I ask Brandon for help, he's going to call me weak ass. Why, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest thing, and if anybody takes anything from this today, I think the biggest thing is if you're struggling, reach out, and then always check in, always check in on your buddies. I do an Instagram post like once a week, and it's checking on the boys, right? Yeah. And it's just a men's mental health thing that I repost. But I think too often we just think we're good, right? Like this dude's crushing with his job, or his wife's doing great, his family's awesome, his kids are great, but we have no idea how he's doing.
Yeah.
Right. And then, dude, that dude just died by suicide. Like we had no idea.
Yeah.
We never asked. Right. And so reach out and always ask for help.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's what I mean. One of the things that I put in my logo is they're tough enough to talk about things and they're tough enough to ask.
Absolutely.
And genuinely ask.
Absolutely.
And when if they want to vent, sometimes, like I've been telling people too, it's like they're not looking for your advice. Sometimes they just want to talk.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they'll work themselves through their own problems.
Yep.
If they just have enough time.
Yep.
But so.
Yep. And that's one thing I do. That's one thing I do with my wife, some of my buddies, and things like that. Is I always ask the question: is this something you want me to fix, or is it something I'm just listening to? Right. Yeah. Because we typically think like, I know how to fix this. No. I don't want you to talk. I don't want any of your advice. Dude. I just want to sit here and ramble for a minute. It's like, cool. Now I know the expectations, right?
Yeah.
But I think we need to get used to, especially as men. I think women do a lot better job than we do, but letting people know how we're doing.
Yeah.
So.
No, I completely agree there. And I mean, other than that, unless there was anything else you thought you wanted to say, I mean, I'd like to tell you I appreciate your time. Absolutely. Thanks for coming in. You had some great points in there, and that's awesome. And I'm glad that you're finding happiness in that. Absolutely. And everything like that.
I appreciate it.
Okay, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Brandon.